Alrighty, guys, we're back for 5 new red decks for Aetherdrift. Awesome. What are the builds we're going to be going over today? Well, we're going to start with discard aggro, rocking new cards like Marauding Mako and Magmakin Artillerist. Cool. Also going to be checking out Lucky Big Red, rocking new cards like Kickoff Celebrations and Count on Luck. How about some max speed? Okay, Burnout Bastronaut and Hazaret Godseeker are some of the new cards there. How about some mono red vehicles? Okay, Gastel Thrill Roller and a Boom Mobile making the cut in the new vehicles list. And then we're going to wrap up the video with some Goblins, playing new cards like a Grease Wrench Goblin and House Squad Heavy. Cool stuff, man. Okay, but real quick disclaimer, all of these deck lists are not meant to be crafted on day one. Set hasn't released yet, so none of the deck lists have been tested. Of course, these are just to get the gears turning. So yeah, just a quick disclaimer. All right, let's go ahead and go over some of these deck lists. All right, starting with discard aggro. What we're going to do is we're just going to name the cards that are in here and then go over the cards individually. So we have 4 Marauding Makos, 4 Grease Wrench Goblins, 4 Monstrous Rage, 4 Burst Lightning. Onto the 2-drop spot, we have all 4 Connecting the Dots. That's one we don't see very often. 4 Grab the Prize, 4 Fugitive Codebreakers, 3 Inti, Sunshall of the Sun, 3 Kickoff Celebrations. We got a couple Squeeze and all 4 Magmakin Artillerists on the top end. 20 Mountains. I think that'll be enough, especially with how much we'll be filtering through our hand. So here's the individual cards. Let's go over them. We have Marauding Mako here. It's a 1-mana 1/1. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, put that many +1/+1 counters on this creature. Cool. And then also it has cycling for 2. And when you cycle for this one, it says pay the 2, discard this card, and then draw a card. So that's how cycling works. Yeah, dude. I mean, that's the reason to try discard aggro, huh? Definitely the best creature in the deck list, right? But we got some other really cool creatures in here. Grease Wrench Goblin actually making the cut. It's just a 1-mana 2/1, and it has an exhaust ability. So when you have an exhaust ability, it says activate each exhaust ability only once. Okay. So for 2 and a red, discard up to 2 cards, then draw that many cards, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Kinda, sorta neat, right? And I needed a lot of creatures packed in since we are rocking Connecting the Dots in here. And so what other 1-mana creature also could have worked in this spot? I'm not really 100% certain right now, but just having a 1-mana creature that still can potentially discard in the future, I don't know, I think it's going to work well. Well, I brought up Connecting the Dots. Let's actually go over that next, huh? So it's a 2-mana enchantment. Whenever a creature you control attacks, exile the top card of your library face down. You can't look at it, gives us that note. And then for 1 and a red, discard your hand, sacrifice Connecting the Dots, put all cards exiled with Connecting the Dots into their owner's hand. It's actually really, really cool, huh? I think that the key thing here is if you have a couple Marauding Makos on the board and you pay 1 and a red, discard your hand, if you're discarding like 3 or 4 cards, that's kind of no joke. At that point, we're kind of afraid of the opponent having a bunch of chump blockers for our big old beefy Makos, huh? So giving trample from something like Monstrous Rage is going to be pretty important. But also Inti over here also knows how to give trample. 2-mana 2/2 legendary creature. Whenever you attack, you may discard a card. When you do, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature. It gains trample until end of turn. That's cool, man. And then also, whenever you discard 1 or more cards, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card until your next end step. Kind of perfect for a discard style deck list, huh? Cool stuff. What other new cards do we have packed in? Well, we have Kickoff Celebrations. It's a 2-mana enchantment with Start Your Engines. If you have no speed, it starts at 1. It increases once on each of your turns when an opponent loses life. Then max speed is 4. So when you have max speed for this card, you can sacrifice this enchantment. Creatures and vehicles you control gain haste until end of turn. Now, the middle ability here is really why it's in here. Whenever this enchantment enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. So it's either this or Bitter Reunion, and I couldn't really tell which one I actually wanted in here. So the new card is the one that I chose, of course, right? I don't think it would be completely unheard of for the game to go on long enough to actually reach the max speed too. A Bitter Reunion makes you actually pay a mana to get the haste to everything, so I don't know. It's going to be interesting to try Kickoff Celebrations. All right, Magmakin Artillerist. 3 mana, 1/4. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, this creature deals that much damage to each opponent. Okay, and then it has cycling for a 1 and a red. And then when you cycle this card, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. Kinda, sort of awesome. The worst part about this is it's just a 1/4. Unfortunately, getting picked up by cards like Cut Down is pretty brutal. But you know, if you're up against mono black or something, you don't have to spend 3 mana to play it as a creature. You could totally cycle it out, ping the opponent's face. Maybe you got that Mako on the board too. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. It's probably, I mean, is it a janky pick? Yes. But it's also one of the main build-arounds in here, so. All right, what else do we got in? We got all 4 of the Burst Lightnings, of course. It's just going to be good to be able to hit the opponent's face, huh? But also clean up early creatures too. Speaking of hitting the opponent's face, Grab the Prize, also fitting the discard theme, and another way to just ping the opponent's face. We got, it's a 2 mana sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you discard a card. Draw 2 cards. If the discarded card wasn't a land, Grab the Prize deals 2 damage to each opponent. Cool. I mean, I called it discard aggro for a reason, so we're trying to do as much damage every single turn as possible. Now, Fugitive Codebreaker, it's like I said, with connecting the dots, we want as many creatures packed in as possible, swinging in every turn too. Fugitive Codebreaker is just a 2 mana 2/1 prowess haste, which is all really good, but then also has that disguise ability, so you could potentially play it as a 3 mana card. That's a 2/2. It has ward 2 as well. Then turn it face up anytime for the disguise cost, of course. It's pretty steep here, 6 mana. It costs, but the cost is reduced by 1 for each instant and sorcery card in your graveyard, which honestly, there's not too many instants and sorceries in here, but you never know. We've been playing some of the cheaper ones like Monstrous Rage and Burst Lightning. Maybe we've been discarding some of them too. Maybe we've been discarding Duplicate Grab the Prize to itself. So it won't be unheard of to get this disguise cost down to maybe like 3 mana or something, right? Now, when this is turned face up, discard your hand, then draw 3 cards. So another creature, kind of fitting the discard theme. Cool. Now, Squee also made the cut in here. So it's 3 mana 2/2. It has haste, of course. When it attacks, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. So generating extra creatures to swing in on following turns for connecting the dots. All that's fine and dandy. Going wide when you have connecting the dots is kind of important. But more importantly here is the bottom ability where you can cast Squee from your graveyard by paying 3 and a red and exiling 4 other cards from your graveyard rather than paying its mana cost. And we should be keeping our graveyard relatively stocked. So honestly, Squee is not a terrible card to discard to some of these other abilities like Grab the Prize or Kickoff Celebrations. Okay, guys, what did I miss? Because something I'm not doing today is honorable mentions. Completely skipped the honorable mentions because there's going to be so many ways to put these deck lists together. So one valid question is, if you're going to go discard, why not go like, is it discard, right? With some of the new pirates and stuff. That's a completely valid question, honestly, but by just going mono red, we're able to fit a whole bunch of neat cards in here that we don't get to see very often. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Okay, how about the next deck list? Let's move on, huh? Lucky Big Red. This one's actually based on a recent Big Red deck list that I did a video for, and I called it like Flame Shaper Red because it's kind of based on the top end Chandra Flame Shaper, making the cut in here as a 2/of. This time round, though, I learned from that video of what kind of top end I actually want to have. In that video, I had 3 Flame Shapers, for example, but I actually have a couple other Chandra packed in too now. Chandra Hope's Beacon, a couple of those making the cut. Got 4 Capricious Hellraisers. That's something that I carried over from the other Big Red deck list. I kept all 4 Hellraisers because it was kind of an MVP in there. This deck list is also based on Charred Foyer and Warp Space, making the cut as a 3/of in here. We got a couple Season of the Bold, a couple Koth. We have one Outpace Oblivion, a couple Slag Storm, a couple Count on Luck, all 4 Seize the Spoils, all 4 Charming Scoundrels, a couple Kickoff Celebrations, a couple Burst Lightnings, as well as 4 Torch the Tower. So a lot of early burn here, early removal. And then also, guys, 24 Mountains this time round. I believe when I put the Flame Shaper Red together, I think I had 25. I think 24 will totally work fine and dandy, though. So let's go over these individual cards then. All right, individual cards. Kickoff Celebrations. Should I go over this as though... Yeah, some people might be skipping around the video, so I should probably go over this again. It's a 2 mana, start your engines. That's what I won't go over, though. I won't read that, like what start your engines actually does. So sorry if you're skipping around the video, but gotta try to save some time here, right? So 2 mana, enchantment, start your engines. When this enchantment enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. Awesome. Has max speed here. Sacrifice this enchantment. Creatures and vehicles you control gain haste until end of turn. Honestly, I don't think it's going to be too hard to get max speed just in general, especially in these deck lists that know how to go well into that mid-game. So another new card, Outpace Oblivion. 3 mana enchantment, also has start your engines. And when this enchantment enters, it deals 5 damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. 5 damage is pretty important, isn't it? Now, it also has a bottom ability for 2. You can sacrifice this enchantment. It deals 2 damage to each player who doesn't have max speed. So speaking of sacrificing this enchantment, it's actually really nice that it is an enchantment that's doing 5 damage to something, because that means that that's an extra thing that we can use to bargain the Torch the Tower, for example, which is actually just really neat. Now we have a couple Count on Lucks. I guess also all of these enchantments could be used to bargain up the Torch the Tower, which is a really good reason why we have all 4 Torch the Tower, which is just excellent removal, isn't it? Count on Luck is a 3 mana enchantment, rocking triple red up there. Okay. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Awesome stuff. Just 3 mana? I'm down, dude. So we're going to be pairing this, of course, with the Warp Space here. It's an enchantment room, 6 mana. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast from exile. Awesome stuff. All right, there's another way to actually exile the cards too. Charred Foyer is the 4 mana side of this room. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play it this turn. So the same thing as Count on Luck, only 1 more mana. All right, what else do we got packed in, guys? Here's some of the cards that I don't really want to go over again, because we get to see them often, I would say. So Burst Lightning, of course, the Charming Scoundrel up here. This Slag Storm is going to be an important piece of, well, board wipe, of course, but then also if you're not wiping the board, dealing 3 damage to each player could really come in handy, and also kind of helps with the whole max speed side of things in here too. The Koth is helping fill our hand with extra mountains, which is going to be pretty important because realistically, we're just looking at treasure ramp in here. Treasure ramp from Charming Scoundrel, treasure ramp from the Seize the Spoils, which by the way is a 3 mana sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card. Draw 2 cards, create a treasure token. Awesome. So we want to keep the graveyard relatively stocked up with important top end things for when it comes time to actually drop the Capricious Hellraiser, which is a 6 mana 4/4. Costs 3 less to cast if there are 9 or more cards in your graveyard, which is going to be actually pretty hard to do, I would say. So realistically, we are looking at this as a 6 mana creature in here, but hopefully that's fine if we are ramping with our Seize the Spoils or Charming Scoundrel and stuff, or just keeping our hand stocked with the extra mountains once we get to 4 for the Koth. Grab the 5th off the Koth ability, grab the 6th off the Koth ability, right? So Capricious Hellraiser, bottom ability here. When it enters, exile 3 cards at random from your graveyard. Choose a non-creature, non-land card from among them, copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So putting an important top end like Chandra. Now look, at that point in the game too, you are just 1 mana away from casting the Chandra anyways, if you spent 6 mana on the Hellraiser. But, you know, getting that 1 extra turn to actually get the Hellraiser and the Flameshaper on the board on the same turn is kind of no joke, right? So at that point too, early on in the game, you're going to be filtering out that top end to help find some of that early removal and stuff, or early board wipes too. So it's not always going to be the best thing to just hold on to the Flameshaper until the very last moment. It's much better just to discard it to some of the other cards in here. All right, Season of the Bold is a 5-mana sorcery. You get to choose up to 5 pawn mark worth of modes. You may choose the same mode more than once. For just 1 pawn mark, create a tapped treasure token. So you could totally just do that 5 times over. That is pretty significant ramp, honestly. But the other abilities happen to be pretty decent too. The middle ability especially working well with the warp space too. So for 2, you can exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play them, okay? And then the bottom ability, when we played the original Flameshaper Big Red, the bottom ability actually came in handy more than you would think. So for 3 pawn marks, until the end of your next turn, whenever you cast a spell, Season of the Bold deals 2 damage to up to 1 target creature, which in this deck list, you're going to be casting multiple things on the same turn. So that ends up adding up a lot and really fast. So I keep bringing up Flameshaper, but what the heck does it do? 7 mana legendary planeswalker, 6 loyalty, has a +2 here where you add triple red, exile the top 3 cards of your library. Choose 1, you may play that card this turn. So yet another exile ability to work with that warp space. Cool. Has a +1, create a token. That's a copy of a target creature you control, except it has haste. And at the beginning of the end step, sacrifice this token. So you know it's going to be a good one to copy with that +1? Hellraiser, of course, right? So if you go Hellraiser, hit the Flameshaper back from the grave, +1 on the Flameshaper, Hellraiser again, right? Hit more stuff out of the grave, and then you're also swinging in the air with that hasty token Hellraiser. It's actually really neat, isn't it? That has a -4/2. Chandra deals 8 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures and or planeswalkers, which of course will come in handy as well. All right, there's a lot in this lucky big red deck list. So much, in fact, I feel like I barely went over. I feel like I barely scratched the surface. This is honestly one that we're just going to have to see being played to really grasp all the extra synergies and whatnot in here. So yeah, onwards to the next deck list. I think so. Let's check it out. Max speed. Okay, so we're going to be playing all 4 Hired Claws in here, all 4 Burnout Bastronauts, 4 Monstrous Rage again. I'm sorry, guys. We got all 4 Burst Lightning again, too. We got a 4 End Rider Catalyzer, something like that. We got 4 Grab the Prize again. How about that? We got 4 Lightning Strikes, 3 Ren's Resolve, 3 Hazaret Godseekers. We got 1 Outpace Oblivion again in this one, too. We have all 4 Screaming Nemesis on the top end here as well. 21 total mana, actually rocking a couple of these Muraganda, raceways. And then we also have a 1 Amonkhet raceway as well. What do all these do, though? Here's the individual cards that I'm not going to go over right now. Monstrous Rage, Burst Lightning, Lightning Strike, Ren's Resolve, Hired Claw, and Screaming Nemesis. We see these so much, I'm not going to read those. We'll talk about them, though, of course, and how they work with the other cards in here. Burnout Astronaut, 1 mana, 1/1, Menace. Start your engines. And then for 2, this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Okay, and then at max speed, this creature has Double Strike. Huh. And I don't think it's going to be unheard of at all to reach max speed right on time in this deck list, right? So when you're looking at these the early max speed cards, you get the Burnout Bastronaut down on turn 1. Unfortunately, it doesn't have haste or anything, so you're not going to be swinging in. So I guess what's the earliest then that we can reach max speed? I should have thought about that before going over this deck list, but at that point too, you don't even need your first creature to actually give you start the engines, right? At that point, you could rock the Hired Claw on turn 1, play a turn 2, start your engines, then swing with the Hired Claw, go up to 2 speed, and then 3 speed on the next turn, then 4 speed on the turn after that. So what is that, turn 4 then, I suppose, no matter what for this deck list? Well, either way, what do the rest of these cards do at max speed? So the End Rider, 2 mana, 3/1. At max speed, you can tap it for double red. What on earth? So I'm opting for some ramp in here, actually. And that's the same thing with the double Muraganda Raceways here. So it has Start Your Engines, which is awesome. And then you can tap it for a colorless. And then you can, at max speed, tap it for 2 colorless, which is actually really interesting, right? The other land that we have packed in, Amonkhet Raceway, Start Your Engines, and then you can tap it for a colorless. And then max speed, tap, target creature gains haste until end of turn. So there's a lot of creatures that actually don't have haste in here. The Burnout, Hired Claw, the End Rider, right? The other cards like Screaming Nemesis, of course, already have haste, but does that mean we actually want 2 Raceways? Like, that is a good chunk of creatures that we can give haste to. I don't know, because there's going to be a lot of moments then where all this extra colorless mana actually holds us up, huh? So what other Start Your Engines or max speed cards do we have? So we have that Outpace Oblivion again, 3 mana enchantment, Start Your Engines. And again, I'm sorry guys for anyone who hasn't been skipping through the video, right? But just in case you have been skipping through, I am going to take the time to read it a little bit at least. So it has Start Your Engines, and when this creature enters, it deals 5 damage to up to 1 target creature or planeswalker. Then for 2, sacrifice this enchantment. It deals 2 damage to each player who doesn't have max speed. Cool stuff. And then the Hazoret Godseeker, 2 mana, 5/3, indestructible, haste. Okay, it has Start Your Engines. And for 1, you can tap this. Target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. Okay. It's not going to be terrible at all to make it so that way Hired Claw doesn't get blocked or something. You know what I mean? So the bottom ability here, Hazoret can't attack or block unless you have max speed. So once you do hit max speed, you can drop this out of your hand as a 5/3 indestructible haste. That seems pretty good for 2 mana, right? Now it is a legendary creature, so that's why we only have 3 of them in here, of course. But is 3 even the number that we want for this? I'm not 100% certain. This is one of those cards that I really just need to get my hands on and get to playing with it to actually see. Because maybe we only want 2 of these. I'm not like 100% certain. But even if we do see extras, we do have some ways to filter it out, grab the prize. So it's a 2 mana. Like I said, I'm still going to read the cards, even though we read them in the other deck list too. I'm sorry, guys. So 2 mana sorcery. Has an additional cost to cast a spell. You discard a card, draw 2 cards. If the discarded card wasn't a land, grab the prize, deals 2 damage to each opponent. So what is grab the prize actually doing in here? Filtering, card draw, all that's great, but we want to do damage every single turn. So not only do we want to see extra cards off the top, especially if we're ramping with the End Rider or the Raceway too, right? We're going to have a lot of excess mana, want to play a lot of excess cards too. But yeah, we want to deal damage every single turn, even while we're getting those excess cards as well. So grab the prize is a way to do that, so we can keep ramping our speed up too. All right. Is there anything else noteworthy? Yeah. Monstrous Rage with a double strike burnout sounds so good, dude. Oh my goodness. So once we actually reach the max speed, burnout being a 1 mana 1/1 menace with double strike swinging in, there's a reason we still have all 4 of the Monstrous Rage in here, right? That's just going to be absolutely disgusting on the burnout. At that point, I think that's that. Am I going over these well enough, guys? It's kind of hard to tell, because usually I would say, well, even if we didn't, we're going to hop into some games anyways, so the deck will, at the very least, showcase itself. But hopefully I'm going over it well enough. A lot of really neat ones in here that I'm excited to try, and it's going to be interesting actually going like this ramp style, but we're not ramping into any top end. Instead, we're ramping into multiple cards on the same turn, which is another great reason why, even though it's not doing damage on the turn that we play the Ren's Resolve, seeing more off the top with the Ren's Resolve is going to be so essential when we have all that excess mana as well. So, all right, onwards. Yeah, onwards. What's next? Vehicles. All right. So we have all 4 Grease Wrench Goblins in here. We have 4 Road Rage, 4 Draconautics Engineer, and then we have 4 Burner Rockets one, if you guys can't tell, this is the first time I'm reading some of these names. We have 1 Agatha's Soul Cauldron. We have 4 Gastral Thrill Riders. We have 4 Thran Spiders. We have 4 Boom Mobiles. We have a 1 of Chandra Spark Hunter. We have a couple of Radiant Lotus. Oh yeah, we got a couple Skitterbeam Battalions here on the top end, and a 1 Push the Limit. We have 25 total mana packed in this time round. 20 Mountains, a couple Rocket Roads. We have a couple Murex and a Mycosynth Garden making the cut too. Let's go over these individual cards, huh? So Road Rage, 1 mana instant speed. Road Rage deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, where X is 2, plus the number of mounts and vehicles you control. I don't think it's going to be unheard of at all for this to be 1 mana instant speed, 4 damage to something, or 5, or maybe 6. Now we're pushing it right there. But no, I think 4 is completely reasonable. And even if it's just 3 at instant speed, 1 mana, dude, I like this card a lot. I actually read it a few times when I first saw it just to make sure I was getting it right. Yeah, 2 plus the number of mounts and vehicles you control. Yeah, I think it's going to be decent in the right build. I think this is the right build. We got Grease Wrench Goblin. Well, that's not a vehicle. It's a 1 mana 2/1. Has exhaust for 2 and a red. Discard up to 2 cards. Then draw that many cards. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. So we have these extra creatures. Number 1, it's a 2/1, and it's going to be able to crew up all the vehicles in here, I'm pretty sure. I'll double check that as we go over it. But also having the exhaust ability is actually going to be pretty important because of that Boom Mobile, which we'll go over in just a second. We also have a Draconautics Engineer, 2 mana 2/2, has exhaust for 1 red mana. Other creatures you control gain haste until end of turn, then you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. That's kind of really good, right? So of course the exhaust abilities can only be activated once, but you have this 2 mana 2/2, and eventually you can spend that 1 extra mana. It becomes a 3/3, but then also any other creature that you dropped that turn is getting that haste. I don't know, dude. That seems pretty decent, but it also has another exhaust ability here for 3 and a red. Create a 4/4 red dinosaur dragon creature token with flying. Okay, then. So how about that Boom Mobile real quick? So it's a 4 mana 5/5 crew for 2 vehicle. When this vehicle enters, add 4 mana of any one color. So we're going to be grabbing red, of course, in here. Spend this mana only to activate abilities. Okay, so as far as I can tell, exhaust abilities are activated abilities. And if I'm wrong, oopsie daisies. So anyways, just playing a Boom Mobile. Now you have that extra 5/5 crew for 2 vehicle on the board already. And then you can go ahead and activate the abilities from like Grease Wrench Goblin or a Draconautics Engineer, which kind of seems disgusting, right? You can play the Boom Mobile. You have the vehicle on the board. Exhaust the bottom ability on the Engineer, get a 4/4 red dinosaur dragon creature token. That's not bad. Now that dinosaur at that point does not have haste, so that is noteworthy. If you had any amount of extra mana on the board to activate the other abilities, like giving it haste and you're exhausting those extra abilities with that extra mana, yeah, all of a sudden, I think that can be one heck of a disgusting turn. And it's not going to be unheard of to have the extra mana since we have all 4 of the Thran Spiders packed in as the main piece of a ramp, I guess, right? It's what we want to call it here. When it enters, of course, you and target opponent each create a tapped Power Stone token, and hopefully you utilize the Power Stone token more than the opponent utilizes it. But you'd be surprised, dude. There's a lot of things you can do with Power Stone tokens. Also, Thran Spider has a bottom ability that is also an activated ability. All these extra activated abilities will work well with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. Again, I seriously hope exhaust abilities are activated abilities. I don't see why they wouldn't be. Sometimes I second guess myself though, so let me know in the comments, right? Yeah, exhaust abilities should be activated abilities, so they should work well with Agatha's Soul Cauldron 2, making the cut as a 1 of. All these extra artifacts and everything is going to work well with our top end Radiant Lotus here. It's a 6 mana artifact. You can tap it, sacrifice 1 or more artifacts, choose a color. That player, target player adds 3 mana of the chosen color For each artifact sacrificed this way. This is another one, man, that I had to read a few times. As far as I can tell, you can sacrifice the Radiant Lotus as well. So you can tap it, sacrifice as many artifacts as you want, and sacrifice the Radiant Lotus, but it doesn't look like you don't have to sacrifice the Radiant Lotus, so that's kind of neat too, right? So at that point, if you're ramping into Radiant Lotus off of a Power Stone on the Thran Spider, so a turn 5 potentially here, right? Then you can sacrifice Radiant Lotus, Thran Spider, and the Power Stone token. You get 9 red mana. Skitterbeam Battalion, 9 mana. So Skitter Beam, of course, has the prototype for just 5 mana as well. And when it enters, if you cast it, you create those 2 tokens that are copies of it as well. So that's going to be another way, like on turn 4 or turn 5. So turn 4 if you have the Thran Spider, of course, right? So you get 3 extra artifacts on the board with the Skitter Beam Battalion, and then maybe next turn drop the Radiant Lotus. You can sacrifice all the extra Skitter Beam Battalions, get a whole bunch of extra mana. What are we going to do with all that extra mana if we're not ramping into the Battalion? Well, bottom ability on the Boom-Mobile, guys. It has an exhaust ability on here too, which is crazy. So for X, 2 and a red, this vehicle deals X damage to any target. Put a +1/+1 counter on this vehicle. So, okay. So how many artifacts do we have to sacrifice off of Radiant Lotus to just have that exhaust ability end the game? At that point in the game, hopefully you've been dealing damage as time went on too, right? So even if you're just sacrificing, let's say, I don't know, 4 artifacts, and one of them is including the Radiant Lotus. So Lotus, 3 other artifacts, right? Well, the Lotus pays for the 3. Now the rest, we're looking at the X here. So that would still be X is 9. Oh my goodness, dude, to any target. That sounds really cool, right? We do have other things that we're ramping up into though as well. So Push the Limit is in here, 7 mana sorcery. Return all mount in vehicle cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Sacrifice them at the beginning of the next end step. Vehicles you control become artifact creatures until end of turn. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. So correct me if I'm mistaken here. We can totally sacrifice all of our vehicles that we played throughout the game to the Radiant Lotus. Ramp into Push the Limit, and then Push the Limit, and then bring back all the vehicles we just sacrificed with the Push the Limit. And then they become creatures and they get the haste too. I don't know, man. That seems pretty cool. But like, you know, you're asking for a lot on all this stuff on the top end, which is kind of why we don't have like 4 Radiant Lotus. We don't have 3 Push the Limits or anything. Just 2 Radiant Lotus, just 1 Push the Limit. I think that really makes sense for the top end on something like this, right? What else do we got packed in, guys? Lots of new things in here. How about Rocky Roads? So it enters tapped unless you control a mount or a vehicle, which, you know, that's going to happen sometimes. It's definitely going to slow you down, but does have a bottom ability here for 1 and a red. You can tap it, sacrifice this land, create a 1/1 colorless pilot creature token with this token saddles, mounts, and cruise vehicles as though its power were 2 greater. Okay. And then activate only as a sorcery. So I don't know. Is this even worth having in here? Probably. You know, utility land in general happens to be pretty darn good. You know, Mirrex and Mycosynth Garden also making the cut. Mirrex generating artifacts that we can potentially sacrifice to like Radiant Lotus or something. Mycosynth Gardens can copy important artifacts, becomes the copy of target non-token artifact you control with mana value X. So maybe you can turn this into an extra Boom-Mobile or something. That could be pretty cool. And then use the exhaustibility on the Mycosynth Gardens Boom-Mobile. It sounds neat, right? Other vehicles packed in. Gastel Thrill Riders, a 3 mana 4/2. Trample, haste. When it enters, it becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. That's really cool. And then you can crew it for 2. Also has a bottom ability here as well for 2 and a red. Discard a card. Return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield with a finality counter on it. Activate only as a sorcery. Guys, even in the grave, this is an activated ability, right? Oh man, I have all these questions. I probably should have went to the Googles before before going over this one at the very least. Well, anyways, I think it's an activated ability. Let me know in the comments. we have another vehicle packed in, burner rocket. How many of these do we have? We actually have all 4 burner rockets in here too. Cool. So it's 2 mana, 3/1 with flash. When it enters, target creature you control gets +2/+0, gains trample until end of turn. Then you can just crew it for 1. Yeah, kind of cool, right? I like it. Oh, Chandra Spark Hunter, another new card. Holy cow. 4 mana legendary planeswalker, 4 loyalty. At the beginning of combat on your turn, choose up to 1 target vehicle you control until end of turn, becomes an artifact creature and gains haste. Awesome. Has a +2 here. You may sacrifice an artifact or discard a card. If you do, draw a card. Okay. The 0 ability, create a 3/2 colorless vehicle artifact creature, artifact token with crew for 1. That has a -7 as well. So you get an emblem with whenever an artifact you control enters, this emblem deals 3 damage to any target. Oh, buddy, these just keep getting more and more difficult to go over, right? Hopefully I went over it well enough. And again, another one where usually when I make a video, I can just say, well, at the very least, we're going to get some matches in. So we'll see the deck list do the thing, right? Not today, unfortunately, huh? So yeah. What's the last deck list to go over? Goblins. All right. 4 Grease Wrench Goblin, 4 Burnout Bastronaut, 4 Cacophony Scamps, 4 Monstrous Rage. Womp womp. So what is that? That's 3 deck lists today that Monstrous Rage made the cut as a 4 of, right? It's just like, sometimes it's just too powerful to pass up. You know what I mean? Working with the Scamp and the Bastronaut is going to be so disgusting, but realistically just working with everything, huh? Especially when you're attacking with creatures every single turn. All 4 Seer Slicer Goblins, all 4 Runvelt Horde Master, all 4 Draconautics Engineer again. We have all 4 Howl Squad Heavies. Can't wait to show you guys that card. Got a couple Dropkick Bombers. We got a Squee in here. We got a Boom Mobile. Okay. We also have 3 Krinko Mob Boss on the top end. 21 total mana, one of them being a Soul Stone Sanctuary. Cool. Let's go over these individual cards. Grease Wrench Goblin, 1 mana, 2/1. Exhaust for 2 and a red. Discard up to 2 cards, and then draw that many cards. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Just like, again, dude, is this like the 3rd deck that Grease Wrench Goblin made the cut in here too? I don't know, man. I really like it. I like the simple design of it too, and I think that the ability is going to come in handy way more than we could possibly imagine as well. Burnout Bastronaut, 1 mana, 1/1 with Menace, of course. Start your engines, okay. And then for 2, this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Has a max speed ability. This creature has double strike. So even if we're not basing the deck list on max speed, at the very least, if Burnout Bastronaut starts your engines and the opponent pops it, then your future Burnout Bastronauts maybe will come in with that double strike, because as the game goes on, you're still going to be gaining speed and stuff too, right? So I don't think the deck list has to be based around max speed to get those extra benefits from these creatures, especially when the benefits are that good. Double strike, it's going to be so powerful with that Monstrous Rage, and Monstrous Rage working really, really well with the Cacophony Scamp ability and everything too. Boosting our Goblin wide board state with Runvelt Horde Master, Dropkick Bomber. That's all going to be pretty important, especially when we're going wide easily with the Seer Slicer Goblin too. Or maybe we're going super duper wide with Krinko Mob Boss here. 4 mana, 3/3. Tap it. Create X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, where X is the number of goblins you control. Well, that's going to get destroyed really fast, isn't it? You know, it'd be nice if there's just some way to give this guy haste. You know what I mean? Right on turn 4, we're curving out. Oh, there is. Let's take a look at it. Howl Squad Heavy. 3 mana, 2/3. Dude, I'm really excited for this one. Okay, Goblin Mercenary. Has Start Your Engines. Cool. So at least there's another card in here that has like a max speed ability and whatnot. Other goblins you control have haste. Okay. Okay, let's read that again. Other goblins you control have haste. Whoop, buddy. Yes, that's what I want to see. So you can curve out on turn 3. Howl Squad Heavy. You're getting Goblin, 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 right? And then Krinko Mob Boss right on turn 4. Tap it. Get a whole bunch of goblins. Guess what, dude? They're goblins. They have haste too. Ah, man, I'm excited for that, huh? I saved the best for last here, guys. I'm very, very excited to revisit Goblins. So, at the beginning of combat on your turn, create a 1/1 red goblin creature token. That token attacks this combat if able. Okay. And then it has that max speed ability here. You can tap it, add a red mana for each goblin you control. So not necessary on here, but boy, that's a little bit of a bonus, isn't it? If you have the max speed already, that can be some significant ramp. And what are we going to do with all that extra mana? Well, maybe we can exhaust some of the abilities on Grease Wrench Goblin, or exhaust some of the abilities on the Engineer as well, right? Oh, yeah. Did I go over Engineer again? I don't think I did. It's like I said, just in case you're bouncing around the video, I do want to go over each card anyway. So even if we already went over it, 2 mana, 2/2, Goblin Artificer. Has exhaust for 1 red mana. Other creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. So another way to potentially give Krenko haste, but at that point you'll need 5 mana total. So a little bit more rare in this scenario. Then you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Cool. Don't forget, guys, exhaust abilities can only be activated once. So it has a bottom exhaust ability as well. For 3 and a red, create a 4/4 red dinosaur dragon creature token with flying. Awesome stuff. And we know already it's going to pair nicely with Boom-Mobile. Well, hopefully, right? Because when I was going over the vehicle deck list, I had that question like, oh crap, is exhaust actually activated ability? But yes, they should be, right? Anyways, Boom-Mobile is a 4 mana 5/5 vehicle with crew for 2. When this vehicle enters, add 4 mana of any one color. Spend this mana only to activate abilities. Then it has the exhaust ability where X, 2 and a red, and this vehicle deals X damage to any target. Put a +1/+1 counter on this vehicle. Of course, activate exhaust abilities only once, right? So yeah, I think it's totally going to be worth the 1 of in here, because having that exhaust ability is actually one of the things that we can use with the max speed ramp on the Howl Squad Heavy. That being said, that's not what the deck list is trying to do. It's just kind of like a little bonus in here, right? If we have so many goblins on the board and we happen to have max speed and we happen to have Boom-Mobile on the board too, then we can tap the Howl Squad Heavy for a bunch of mana and plug it all into that exhaust ability. Dealing that damage to any target just seems so good to me, dude. Also, like, ramping with the Howl Squad Heavy, just dumping your hand onto the board is going to be pretty good. Maybe you want to spend 4 mana on the Soulstone Sanctuary. One of the reasons the Soulstone Sanctuary made the cut as a 1-of, or the main reason, because when it powers up as a 3/3 a vigilant creature, it has all creature types as well. So when you do end up powering this up, it's going to be a goblin too, which could be really important, especially if you're giving it haste off of like Howl Squad Heavy, or if you're just boosting it with the Horde Master or the Dropkick Bomber too. All right, guys, is that everything that I want to go over for the list? I guess so. I don't know, bro. Again, it'd be awesome if we could just take these into some quick games real quick to have the deck list showcase themselves. Guys, what do you think of this style of video? Let me know in the comments for sure. If you made it this far into the video, by the way, y'all are champions for real. And seriously, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you actually drop it a like. If you enjoy the channel, consider subscribing as well. It really does help out the channel. Let me know, out of these 5 deck lists, which one are you most excited for? Or which one got your gears turning the most? Which one are you thinking about? I'm personally most excited for the goblins, but I don't know. Like the vehicles could be really, really cool. Honestly, all of these could be really cool though. Max speed, of course, right? The lucky big red. I already know that the Flame Shaper red was just epic, right? But we called it lucky big red for a reason. You're gonna have to get a little lucky sometimes for this one. So potentially one of the most janky, but maybe the discard aggro is actually the most janky. Either way, I'm excited for all of them, man. Let's go back to the first page here. 5 new red decks for Aetherdrift. Yeah, this was hard, man, going over all those different deck lists, because I always feel like I'm missing something. You know, every time I go over the deck list at the beginning of our normal videos, I feel like I'm missing a lot. And then thankfully the matches kind of, you know, we get to go over the deck as we're playing the matches. So let me know what I missed. What should be in the honorable mentions for these deck lists? do these deck lists even deserve to be mono red? For example, vehicles might look a lot cooler if it was Boros vehicles or something, you know what I mean? So yeah, let me know in the comments for these deck lists. What would you add or take out? And remember, guys, these aren't meant to be crafted. These are just meant to get the gears turning, get us to think about the new cards, new red cards, of course, right? This is Red Cat MTG after all, right? That being said, yeah, none of the deck lists are actually going to be in the description. I'm not going to put any of them over on Aetherhub either, because yeah, they're not meant to be crafted. Oh, also guys, when Aetherdrift actually comes out, which one of these should we visit first? I usually do mono red aggro, and I'm heavily leaning towards Goblins, so that's probably the one I'll start with once Aetherdrift releases, but we'll see, won't we? All right, guys, hey, yeah, again, if you made it this far into the video for real, y'all are champions. Let me know if you like this style of video in general. Maybe we'll do more in the future. It was definitely a lot harder to put together since we didn't have MTG Arena to build the deck lists in, so. All right, guys. Hey, I will see you in the next video.